A lot of things that happen on this planet that are simply out of our control. Try as we might to dominate everything around us. At the end of the day, we are constantly at the mercy of natural disasters. But not all disasters are the fault of nature. In fact, some of the most devastating disasters are simply the fault of human error and negligence. Had a little more care been taken, many of these catastrophes could have been avoided. From oil spills to chemical factories, here are 5 of the worst man-made disasters in human history. The Deepwater Horizon was a decade-old semi-submersible drilling rig that was stationed in the Gulf of Mexico. The purpose of the structure was to drill an exploratory well over 18,000 feet below sea level. It was a fairly standard operation that was running successfully for many years. However, everything took a turn for the worst on April 20th, 2010. At 9:45 p.m. Central Time, a burst of water erupted from the marine riser and onto the rig. This was followed by a combination of mud, water, and worst of all, methane gas. It wasn't long after this that the methane gas caught fire and exploded. During all of this, 126 crew members were on board. They immediately knew something was wrong because they could feel 2 strong vibrations and the electric lights on board began to flicker. The crew members had less than 5 minutes to evacuate the structure. Out of the 126 people on board, 11 individuals lost their lives. By the time April 22nd came around, the entire rig had sunk into the sea. This was also the date in which the Coast Guard discovered that oil continued to leak from the rig at a rate of roughly 8,000 barrels per day. 2 remote-operated underwater vessels were sent to try to cap the well, but those efforts proved to be unsuccessful. Next, BP tried to place a 280,000-pound containment dome over the leak. While it is a technique that's useful in shallow water, it too failed here. It wasn't until July 15th, almost 3 months after the initial incident, that the well was finally closed and the leak stopped. An investigation into the incident soon followed. In June of 2010, the House Committee on Energy and Commerce said that BP should have used cement at the well. It would have cost the company $128,000 and would have taken between 8 and 12 hours to complete. A more thorough investigation found that 6 different operations, equipment functions, and tests ultimately led to the blowout in the 32 hours preceding the explosion. In July of 2015, BP agreed to pay $18.7 billion in fines, making it the biggest corporate settlement in the history of the United States. On the night spanning December 2nd and 3rd, 1984, one of the worst industrial disasters in the history of the world took place. It was on that evening an accident occurred at the Union Carbide pesticide plant located in Bhopal, India. This event released a minimum of 30 tons of an incredibly toxic gas known as methyl isocyanate, in addition to numerous other poisonous gases into the local environment. Sadly, many shanty towns were located in the immediate vicinity of the plant. In total, over 600,000 people were exposed to a deadly cloud of gas that night. These particular gases tend to remain fairly low to the ground. Countless people reported feeling nauseous and that their eyes and throats began to burn, and unfortunately, many people lost their lives in the aftermath. Estimates of the gas leak's death toll range from 3,800 to 16,000. And many people still suffer physical and emotional scars from that night. However, much of the health data related to the incident is still not available. The Indian Council of Medical Research was forbidden from publishing data in regards to the gas leak until 1984. The disaster occurred as a result of water entering a tank filled with methyl isocyanate. This led to a chemical reaction causing the temperature inside the tank to reach over 392 degrees Fahrenheit. There are 2 main arguments as to why this happened. The first is that the Union Carbide India Limited chemical plant was already in very poor condition, was under-maintained, and had broken dozens of safety regulations prior to this incident. The other side of the argument is that it is not physically possible for water to have entered the tank on its own, and that human effort had to have played a role. Criminal and civil cases were filed in the United States against UCC and Warren Anderson, who was the CEO of the company at the time of the disaster. However, these cases were repeatedly redirected and dismissed to Indian courts several times from 1986 to 2012. As of 2018, efforts to clean up the area remain stagnant. Chemical plant explosions happen all over the world, like this one that occurred at a Texas chemical plant back in 2013. But one of, if not the worst to ever happen, was the Jilin chemical plant explosion. The Jilin chemical explosion actually consists of a series of blasts that took place on November 13, 2005, in Jilin City, China. Over the period of a single hour, numerous explosions occurred at the number 101 petrochemical plant that resulted in 6 deaths and dozens of injuries. 2 days after the explosions, it was determined that the accident site had a nitration unit for aniline equipment. One tower was jammed up and not handled properly, which ultimately led to the explosions. These blasts were so powerful that they completely shattered windows that were at least 650 feet away. Fires built up from the blasts that were not put out until the following day. More than 10,000 individuals had to be evacuated out of fear that more explosions could have been imminent. While initial reports thought that the explosion could have occurred as a result of terrorism, the company stated that it was a result of a chemical blockage that had not been fixed. The fallout from the explosions lasted more than just that day. It significantly polluted the nearby Songhua River. An estimated 100 tons of pollutants, including nitrobenzene and benzene, entered the river. Exposure to benzene has been linked with leukemia and reduced red blood cell counts. The contaminants gradually flowed into the Strait of Tartary and then eventually into the Sea of Japan. The effects of the explosion also made their way to Russia. On December 16th of that year, the toxic slick that had entered the water arrived in the city of Khabarovsk. Granted, the slick was severely diluted by this point, but Russia prepared by digging extra wells and storing clean water before the slick reached the city. The Great Smog of 1952 refers to a significant air pollution event that overtook the city of London in early December of 1952. It was marked by a period of unusually cold weather, including windless and anti-cyclone conditions. However, those factors didn't create the event all their own, or else this entry wouldn't make it on the list.